Okay, based on the Model B from Part C, find Bob's average velocity. So one way to find the average of V is this formula here. You don't actually use this formula on this year's test. I'm not testing it on, but I needed a question that had you practice some integrals, so that's why I used this one. Plus we've already learned it. So I'm finding the average of V, so I'm going to integrate V. And don't forget the multiply by 1 over 10, because the time interval is from 0 to 10. So I write 1 over 10, integral from 0 to 10 of V. V is the formula on this previous part, so t cubed minus 6t squared. Don't forget the parenthesis. Leave it as plus 300, yep. Closing parenthesis, dt. The way they scored this one, let me just check the scoring guide. So if you had that much, you got 1 point. Now this problem this year could be solved on a calculator. On your calculator, you write out the integral, and they would probably change the scoring, but for this practice test, I'll give you 1 point if you remember the 1 over 10, 1 point if you have the integral. I just wrote b, because I already know from the previous part what b is equal to. That's a second point. And then this year you can just type it in your calculator to get the 350. So if you have the correct answer, you do have to round correctly to 3 decimals. So if I'm doing it on my calculator, I would write out the 3 decimals. You get a third point for a total of 3 points. Just to practice what happens if you encounter a problem where you really couldn't type it into the calculator. Don't forget that the way you solve this integral, you still have the 1 over 10. Now we must find the antiderivative of this. So that's going to be t to the 4th over 4 minus 6t cubed over 3 plus 300t. And then bar 0 to 10. That would be 1 more point. When we plug everything in, the good news is, as always, we don't have to do any simplification. So just have to be careful with all of our parentheses. Always put a set of parentheses in place of the variable you are replacing. That's too easy to just go to 2, I guess, but be careful. If you're uncertain, just leave a... Okay, now if we were to say minus and then plug everything in again, in each one of these terms we would be plugging in 0, and the result would be 0. So they don't require you to write that out. You can basically just notice that it doesn't matter. Ah, that's terrible. So erase this. Oops. And just put a closing parenthesis on it and you're done. That's the third point. You don't have to do anything else.